Hello everybody, it's the Game Judge here, and the truth has indeed been revealed in a recent interview with a dev about how Starfield was developed and how Bethesda has changed over the years. Now, with Starfield being released a few months ago, people have had time to digest the game, and unsurprisingly, more and more news is coming out about Starfield. Now, one of my biggest complaints about Starfield in the recent review that I did was that I felt like it sacrificed size for everything, and apparently a former senior dev for Bethesda, Bruce Neesmith, agreed with this sentiment. Now, if you guys don't know who Bruce Neesmith is, he was a developer for Bethesda and started in 1995 when he first worked on Elder Scrolls II: Daggerfall. He was later on promoted to senior game designer for Bethesda and worked extensively on Oblivion, becoming lead designer for Skyrim, as well as working on the writing for Fallout 3. He left Bethesda in 2021 to pursue his novelist career. So needless to say, he was a very seasoned developer for Bethesda and has some credibility to his opinion. This article by GamesRadar shares some telling information in an interview with Bruce Neesmith. Bruce Neesmith shares that he voiced the view that the game would be a lot better if we restricted ourselves to about 24 solar systems and focused on them. You mean actually having planets and solar systems that are fun to explore and aren't barren wastelands that have more than 2 or 3 POIs? What a thought. He goes on to say, Todd pretty much pulled the number 100 for the number of solar systems out of thin air. The more we went on, the more it was like, okay, people love our big games. They love the open area to explore, so let's go ahead and let them have it. That's so crazy to me. Your first new IP in 25 years, and this guy's just drawing numbers out of a hat. That is just... wow. I think some of the exploration stuff didn't come through as well as it could have because they decided to make other choices. And every game studio on the face of this planet, they know the choices they're making. They know the things that are not going to be in there. They know what the players are going to moan about, but you got to make the hard choice. Well, it seems like Todd didn't make too hard of a choice considering he pulled the number 100 out of his ass for the amount of solar systems in this video game. I mean, is he even trying at this point? I find this all very interesting. It just verifies the feelings that I had about Starfield. It seems like some developers had the feeling that this game got out of hand with its size and perhaps that they should have focused on other things in the game, like the damn facial animations, so it doesn't feel like you're playing a horror game. It makes you wonder how many devs felt this way and if any decided to speak up. Maybe they were scared to speak up, or maybe communication was harder in general. This leads us to some more interesting information about the things going on at Bethesda. This is all according to Bruce Neesmith. All decisions at the studio run through director Todd Howard. No surprise there, I think we kind of already knew this, but this next part is really telling. The success of several Bethesda-produced games meant that the team enlarged to a slightly uncomfortable size, according to Neesmith, which partially contributed to his leaving. Another piece of evidence that Bethesda has lost its mojo. It seems like perhaps Bethesda was getting a little too big for his britches. Generally, anytime you increase the size of something, in other words the quantity, then the quality can suffer. It's like a balancing act of both sides. This seems to be the case with Bethesda. If you look at Bethesda's past development history and size, it starts to make sense where the issue started with the quantity increasing and the quality decreasing. In 2015, Bethesda opened a satellite studio in Montreal, and then in 2018, 2 ZeniMax studios became a part of Bethesda Game Studios. This was Battlecry Studios in Austin and Escalation Studios in Dallas. Then on top of this, Bethesda Game Studios dipped into the mobile gaming market in 2015 with Fallout Shelter and the Elder Scrolls Blades in 2017. So you now have gone from being this one studio in Bethesda Game Studios focused on RPGs and mostly the Elder Scrolls series and the Fallout series to a glob of other studios that you have to manage and run things. This is interesting considering in 2016, Todd Howard talked about how they didn't want to be known as a studio that just developed Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Elder Scrolls. And given their past quality in developing games, that the creators should be able to do other things. I find it funny or rather convenient that he said this after all the expansions of studios with Bethesda in 2015. I wonder, Todd, is that because developers wanted to do different things, or is that because you wanted to expand in size and venture into mobile gaming? Was this because you wanted to make more money, or were you forced to expand? This leads us to 2015. This was when, to me, Bethesda released their last okay game, and that was Fallout 4. And it was a step down for me. It was too safe, relied on their past formula heavily, and lacked any kind of innovation. And then after that, we have a re-release of Skyrim, of course. Then we have Fallout 76 in 2018, and we all know how that went with the famous
16 times the detail.
Then Elder Scrolls Blades in 2020, and then Starfield in 2023. To me, this means Bethesda has not made a good quality game since 2015. Right around the time Bethesda went to an expansion with all these studios. But I want to circle back around to the interview with Bruce Neesmith and how this pertains to Starfield. There was a lot of change going on. You didn't get to interact with Todd as much anymore. When you're running 6 different studios and you got a dozen projects going on at a time, he's only one man. Despite the lines of communication becoming a lot more rigid, Howard supposedly had the final say on most creative decisions. Anything different than the Bethesda usual, they would have to get the idea in front of him. This is quite interesting and telling, and it seems like communication became more difficult with Todd, especially after the expansions in 2015. So they probably have Todd Howard running around with all these other studios and he's cut off from more communication with the devs, or maybe Todd is just stretched too thin and can't put his full effort into a game like Starfield, which is why he pulled the number 100 out of his ass for the solar system in Starfield. It seems like he just wanted to rely on the old Bethesda formula without putting too much effort or heart into Starfield, and it shows in the passionless Starfield. I think when you put this all together, it starts to paint a clearer picture about what's been going on at Bethesda. I think at one point they were kind of a smaller business and they were focused on making quality games, right? They could just really focus on making Elder Scrolls or Fallout. And then I think as they started to expand more and more for whatever reason, maybe Todd wanted to make more money, I'm not really sure, maybe it was the parent company ZeniMax. I think that the quality just really started to suffer, and somewhere along the line they lost that passion, and unfortunately, that's why we got Starfield, and I have no hope for Elder Scrolls 6.